Nana was known for her kindness and beauty, and she had captured the heart of a humble carpenter who worked tirelessly, crafting beautiful furniture and saving every penny, dreaming of the day he could marry Nana. One day, Nana's family, struggling with financial hardships, made a heart-wrenching decision. They accepted an offer from a wealthy man named Mr. Simon, who promised them a substantial sum of money in exchange for Nana. They told Nana she had been offered a new job in the city, where she could also attend school. Excited by the prospect of a better future, Nana agreed, unaware of the true nature of the arrangement. When Nana arrived at Mr. Simon's grand estate, she was greeted with a cold reality. Mr. Simon explained that she was there to serve him, not to work or study. Devastated and confused, Nana realized she had been sold. She felt betrayed and heartbroken, especially for Emeka, who had no idea where she had gone. Back in the village was shattered when he learned of Nana's fate. He couldn't believe that the love of his life had been taken away. Determined to find her, he set out on a journey, following every lead and asking everyone he met if they had seen Nana. Nana found herself trapped in Mr. Simon's opulent mansion, a gilded cage that felt more like a prison with each passing day. Despite the luxurious surroundings, she despised everything about her new life. Every day was a struggle for Nana. She couldn't leave the estate as guards patrolled the gates, ensuring she remained within the confines of the property. The isolation weighed heavily on her, and she longed for the freedom she once had. Mr. Simon's habits only added to her misery. Despite his attempts to win her over with lavish gifts, Nana could not bring herself to appreciate them. Each present felt like a reminder of her captivity, a symbol of the life she had been forced into. Mr. Simon would present her with expensive jewelry, designer clothes, and rare perfumes, but none of it could mask the reality of her situation. Nana's days were filled with a sense of dread and hopelessness. She missed Emeka terribly and wondered if he was still searching for her. The thought of him gave her a glimmer of hope, a small light in the darkness of her existence. One day, Mr. Simon surprised Nana with a letter from the university. As she opened it, her eyes widened with joy. She had been accepted. The news was a welcome distraction from the stress and heartache she had been feeling over her ex-boyfriend. Nana felt a surge of happiness and relief. The thought of immersing herself in her studies and focusing on her future was exactly what she needed. She eagerly embraced the opportunity, knowing that it would keep her mind occupied and help her move forward. From that day on, Nana dedicated herself to her studies. She spent her days attending lectures, diving into textbooks, and working on assignments. The academic challenges and new experiences at the university provided her with a sense of purpose and fulfillment. Slowly but surely, the pain of her past began to fade, replaced by the excitement of new beginnings and the promise of a brighter future. Nana was excelling at university, achieving top grades despite the personal challenges she faced. She poured all her energy into her studies, using her academic pursuits as a way to cope with her emotions and distract herself from her problems. Her dedication paid off as she consistently received high marks and praise from her professors. In addition to her academic success, Nana used her studies as an excuse to avoid spending time with Mr. Simon. She immersed herself in her books, often staying late at the library or working on assignments in her room. Through her hard work and determination, Nana not only excelled academically, but also began to rebuild her confidence and sense of self-worth. Her achievements at university became a source of pride and a reminder of her resilience, helping her to navigate the complexities of her personal life. One day, Nana received an unexpected call from Emeka. The moment she heard his voice, a flood of emotions washed over her. They began talking, and before they knew it, hours had passed. Their conversations became a regular occurrence, and Nana found herself eagerly anticipating each call. During their phone calls, they said many things that touched Nana's heart deeply. He spoke about how much he missed her and how he had never stopped thinking about her. He shared his feelings of regret and sorrow for the time they had lost and expressed his unwavering love for her. He reminded Nana of the special moments they had shared, recounting memories that made her smile and feel cherished. He also spoke about his determination to fight for their love, no matter the obstacles. He assured her that he believed in their future together and that he was willing to do whatever it took to make things right. As Nana reconnected, she started to spend less time with Mr. Simon, would often pretend she needed to go to the library or make copies, using these excuses to steal moments to talk with Emeka. Their conversations were a mix of catching up on lost time, sharing their current lives, and reminiscing about the past. One day, Nana received exciting news from Emeka that he had secured a new job in the same area where Nana lived. They devised a plan to explain his sudden presence. Nana would introduce Ima as her long-lost cousin from the UK. Mr. Simon, unaware of their true relationship, welcomed Emeka warmly. The plan worked seamlessly, and Emeka began staying with Nana and Mr. Simon while he searched for his own accommodation. During this time, Emeka and Nana grew even closer. Living under the same roof allowed them to spend more time together, rekindling their bond and deepening their connection. They shared meals, studied together, and supported each other through their daily challenges. Emeka's presence brought a sense of comfort and familiarity to Nana's life, and she found herself smiling more often. He appreciated Emeka's company and the positive influence he had on Nana. As the days passed, the three of them formed a unique and harmonious household. Emeka's determination to be near Nana and fight for their love only strengthened his resolve, and Nana felt more hopeful about their future together. Through this period, Emeka and Nana's relationship blossomed, and they both realized that their love was worth fighting for. The time they spent together solidified their commitment to each other, and they began to envision a future where they could be truly happy. However, as time went on, Mr. Simon began to notice the closeness between Nana. Although he didn't confront them directly, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more between them. Their interactions were warm and affectionate, and they seemed to share a deep bond that went beyond mere familial ties. Small gestures, shared glances, and the way they supported each other hinted at a deeper connection. He began to suspect that there was more to Emeka and Nana's relationship than just being long-lost cousins. Despite these observations, Mr. Simon didn't confront them directly. He valued the harmony in their household and didn't want to disrupt it. Instead, he chose to watch and wait, hoping that if there was more to their relationship, Nana would eventually confide in him. In the meantime, he continued to treat with kindness and respect, allowing the situation to unfold naturally. Nana felt guilty about deceiving Mr. Simon. Although she was grateful for Emeka's presence and the chance to rekindle their relationship, the deception weighed heavily on her conscience. Mr. Simon had been kind and supportive, and she hated the idea of betraying his trust. Nana often found herself torn between her love for Emeka and her sense of loyalty to Mr. Simon. She knew that their plan was necessary to keep them close, but the guilt lingered. Every time she saw Mr. Simon's genuine kindness and hospitality towards her, feelings of remorse intensified. Nana continued with the charade, hoping that one day she could explain everything to Mr. Simon and make amends. She believed that once the truth was revealed, he would understand the depth of her love for Emeka and the difficult choices she had to make. Until then, she tried to balance her emotions and navigate the complexities of her situation as best as she could. In the midst of her academic success and personal challenges, these moments became a cherished part of her day, helping her navigate the complexities of her emotions and relationships. Meanwhile, Nana was determined to escape. She kept her distance from Mr. Simon, avoiding him whenever possible and looking for any opportunity to flee. One evening, as Nana sat by the window, staring out at the vast estate, she noticed a small hidden path leading away from the mansion. It was overgrown and barely visible, but it sparked an idea. She quickly called Emeka over, and together they examined the path, realizing it could be their way. They began to form a plan. They knew they had to leave Mr. Simon's house and were prepared to bear any consequences. Nana started to observe the guards' routines, noting when they were most distracted. She befriended a few of the household staff, hoping to gain their trust and possibly their help. She knew it would be risky, but she couldn't bear the thought of spending another day in Mr. Simon's house. Over the next few days, they discreetly gathered supplies, food, water, and some money, without arousing suspicion. They also mapped out the path, noting landmarks and potential obstacles. Nana and Emeka decided to leave under the cover of darkness to avoid detection. They agreed on a signal. A flickering light in Nana's window would indicate it was time to go. On the chosen night, Nana packed her essentials and waited anxiously by the window. When the time came, she signaled Emeka, and they quietly slipped out of the house. Navigating the hidden path was challenging, but their determination kept them moving forward. They helped each other through the overgrown foliage, careful to stay silent and avoid leaving any trace. As they reached the end of the path, they felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. They knew their journey was just beginning, but they were ready to face whatever lay ahead together. With each step, Nana and Emeka felt a growing sense of freedom and hope. They had taken a bold risk, but their love and resolve gave them the strength to keep going. As they ventured into the unknown, they held onto the belief that their future together was worth fighting for. As they made their way through the dense foliage, they stumbled upon an old, abandoned cabin. Inside, they found an elderly woman named Mama Jola, who had been living there in seclusion. Mama Jola was kind and wise, and she immediately sensed their desperation and need for help. Mama Jola offered them shelter for the night and shared her food with them. She listened to their story with empathy and understanding, and in return, she shared her own experiences of overcoming hardships. Her words of wisdom and encouragement gave Nena and Emeka renewed strength and hope. Before they left, Mama Jola provided them with a map of the surrounding area, highlighting safer routes and potential dangers. She also gave them a small pouch of herbs and remedies to help them stay healthy on their journey. Her kindness and support were invaluable, and Nena and Emeka felt a deep sense of gratitude for her unexpected assistance. With Mama Jola's guidance and the supplies she provided, Nena and Emeka continued their journey with a greater sense of confidence and determination. As dawn broke, they found herself at the edge of the village where they had grown up. Exhausted but determined, they continued on, their feet aching, the spirit weary. They vowed never to be separated again. In the meantime, Mr. Simon discovered Nena and Emeka's disappearance. He was furious and immediately blamed the guards for their negligence. His anger was palpable as he demanded answers and ordered a search to find them. Despite his efforts, Nena and Emeka were already far away, determined to start their new life together. While Mr. Simon was dealing with the chaos back at the mansion, Emeka and Nena were busy planning their future. Emeka informed his parents about their decision to get married, and they were overjoyed. They quickly began arranging a traditional wedding introduction, a ceremony where both families would come together to celebrate the union. On the day of the ceremony, the atmosphere was filled with excitement and anticipation. Family members from both sides gathered, dressed in vibrant traditional attire. The air was filled with the sounds of laughter, music, and the aroma of delicious food being prepared. Nena and Emeka stood together, hand in hand, as they were introduced to each other's families. The ceremony was a beautiful blend of customs and traditions, symbolizing the joining of their lives and families. Just as the ceremony was reaching its peak, and they were about to exchange vows, a car pulled up. Everyone turned to see who had arrived. To their surprise, it was Mr. Simon. He stepped out of the car and walked towards the gathering, his expression serious but calm. Nena and Emeka watched with bated breath, unsure of what to expect. Mr. Simon raised his hand to address the crowd. "I am not here to stop the introduction," he began, his voice steady, "but I need to say something important. Emeka is my son." A collective gasp went through the crowd as Mr. Simon continued. "I asked Nena's parents to marry her with good intentions, not to make her my wife, but to get to know her as a future daughter-in-law. I have a wife, and she will join us soon." The shock was palpable as everyone processed his words. Mr. Simon took a deep breath before revealing the most astonishing part of his story. "I was told by my ex-wife that my son had died. I recently found out when my ex-wife called. Before she died that he is alive and lives with her cousin. I should find him. I had no idea until now. I wasn't even aware of this even when he was right under my nose." Nena and Emeka were stunned. The revelation that Mr. Simon was his father beyond anything they had gained. Emeka knew all along that her auntie was not his mother and never got to question his real identity, as it was always the same answer. "You don't have parents," the crowd murmured in disbelief. But Mr. Simon's sincerity was evident. He looked at Emeka with tears in his eyes and felt a rush of emotions, confusion, relief, and a newfound understanding. Mr. Simon approached Nena and Emeka, placing a hand on each of their shoulders. "I am so grateful to have found my son, and I am even more grateful that he has found someone as wonderful as Nena. I hope you can forgive me for his deception. My intentions were always to bring our family together." The crowd slowly began to understand the depth of Mr. Simon's actions. Emeka was still mixed with emotions. He had been living with his father all this time and never knew. As they embraced, Mrs. Simon arrived at the ceremony to join her husband. "This is my wife," Mr. Simon announced. At that moment, Nena's mother began to feel uncomfortable. "Are you okay?" Nena asked her mother, noticing her distress. "Chidi, is that you?" Mrs. Simon asked, her voice trembling. "Chidi, I never thought I would see you again." "Why, Chidi? Why? How could you? I trusted you." Chidi's husband turned to her, confusion etched on his face. What is she talking about? He asked. Mr. Simon, equally puzzled, looked at Chidi. Do you know her? He asked. The crowd fell silent, all eyes on Chidi as she tried to regain her composure. She took a deep breath, struggling to find the words to explain the past that had suddenly resurfaced. The tension in the air was palpable, as everyone waited for her to speak. The weight of the moment pressing down on them all. Chidi's connection to Mrs. Simon was rooted in a complicated and painful past. As the crowd waited in silence, Chidi finally found the courage to speak. Yes, I know her, Chidi began, her voice shaking. Mrs. Smith and I were once very close friends. We grew up together and shared everything. But something happened that changed everything. Mrs. Simon's eyes filled with tears as she listened. Chidi, you disappeared without a word. I searched for you everywhere. Why did you leave? Chidi took a deep breath, her voice trembling. I had only gone for a minute to get food for my baby. I asked you to watch her, but when I got back, you were gone. Gone with my daughter without a trace. I lied to my husband, who was on a business trip abroad, and said the baby died. What? Mr. Simon exclaimed. You mean she stole our baby? Where is my baby? Mrs. Smith demanded, her voice breaking. Give me my child now, Chidi. Naina, growing increasingly worried, turned to her mother. Mom, what is she talking about? Who is her daughter? Speak, Chidi's husband shouted, his voice filled with anger and confusion. I'm... Speak now, he shouted again. I'm sorry, my daughter, Chidi finally said, tears streaming down her face. Forgive me. We are not your real parents. I stole you from my friend. I needed a child. Otherwise, my marriage was at stake. I had to save my marriage. Mom, why? Naina cried, her voice filled with anguish. So you mean Naina is my daughter you stole? Mrs. Smith asked, her voice trembling. Yes, she is, Chidi admitted, her voice barely a whisper. What? Mr. Simon and Emeka exclaimed in unison. She is my sister, Emeka shouted, overwhelmed by the revelation. The ceremony, which had started as a joyous occasion, had turned into a moment of profound revelation and emotional turmoil. Are you okay? Emeka asked softly, squeezing her hand gently. Naina nodded slowly, though she still felt disoriented. I don't know what to think, she whispered, her voice shaky. Everything feels like a dream. Mrs. Simon stepped forward, tears in her eyes. Naina, my dear, I am so sorry for everything. I never stopped looking for you. Chidi, standing beside her, looked devastated. Naina, please forgive me. I made a terrible mistake and I have regretted it every day. Naina took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. I need time to process all of this, she said, her voice gaining strength. This is a lot to take in. Meanwhile, the crowd was in disbelief, murmuring among themselves. Sensing the gravity of the moment, everyone remained silent. As she looked around at the faces of her family and friends, she felt a mix of emotions: shock, anger, sadness. The shock was too much for Naina, and she fainted, collapsing into Emeka's arms. When Naina woke up after fainting, she was surrounded by concerned faces. Emeka was holding her hand, his eyes filled with worry. Her parents, Chidi and Mr. Simon, stood nearby, their expressions a mix of anxiety and guilt. Overwhelmed by the shame and confusion of almost marrying her brother, she suddenly got up and ran away. Emeka tried to stop her, calling out her name, but his father gently held him back. Give her time to digest all this, Mr. Simon said. She needs time. Naina ran without stopping, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. She didn't know where she was going, only that she needed to escape the overwhelming situation. As she ran, tears streaming down her face, she was unaware of her surroundings. In her distress, she didn't notice that she was crossing a busy road. A car, unable to stop in time, struck her. The driver, horrified, immediately got out and rushed to her side. Without hesitation, he carefully lifted Naina into his car and sped to the nearest hospital, praying that she would be okay. At the hospital, doctors and nurses quickly took over, working to stabilize Naina. The driver, still shaken, stayed by her side, determined to ensure she received the best care possible. Meanwhile, back at the ceremony, they got worried about Naina, adding another layer of shock and concern to an already tumultuous day. Naina sustained several serious injuries from the accident. When the car struck her, she suffered multiple fractures, including broken ribs and a fractured leg. She also had a concussion and several cuts and bruises from the impact. The driver, acting quickly, took her to the hospital where she was immediately attended to by medical professionals. At the hospital, doctors worked to stabilize her condition. They set her broken bones and monitored her for any signs of internal injuries or complications from the concussion. Nana was placed under observation to ensure she received the best possible care during her recovery. The driver named David, who had accidentally struck Nana, stayed by her side, hoping she would wake up so he could get her name and contact information. Days turned into weeks, but Nana remained unconscious. The driver, feeling a deep sense of responsibility, visited her daily, ensuring she received the best care possible. Meanwhile, Nana's family was frantically searching for her. They checked all the local hospitals, unaware that the driver had taken her to a well-equipped hospital in a neighboring area to ensure she received the best treatment. Despite their efforts, they couldn't find any trace of her. At the hospital, the staff only knew Nana as a Jane Doe, as she had no identification on her. David, who had stayed with her from the moment of the accident, was also in the dark about her identity. He spent his days by her bedside, talking to her in the hope that his voice might reach her and bring her back to consciousness. The driver's dedication did not go unnoticed by the hospital staff, who admired his commitment to a stranger. He made sure Nana received the best medical attention, consulting with doctors, and ensuring she had everything she needed for her recovery. Despite the uncertainty and the long wait, he remained hopeful that Nana would wake up and they could finally reunite her with her family. He drove back to the accident scene hoping to find some identity. With no luck, so David, not knowing Nana's identity, referred to her as Jane Doe. He stayed with her, talking to her softly, sharing stories, and hoping his voice might reach her. He felt a growing bond with her, even though they had never spoken. One day, as David sat by Nana's bedside, holding her hand, he noticed a slight movement. His heart leaped with hope. "Jane, can you hear me?" he asked gently. Her eyelids fluttered, and she slowly opened her eyes, looking around in confusion. "Where am I?" she whispered, her voice weak. "You're in the hospital," David said, relief flooding his voice. "You were in an accident, but you're safe now. Can you tell me your name? Do you remember anything?" She took a moment to gather her thoughts. "My name is… she began, but David quickly interrupted her. "Wait, don't speak. I will call the nurse." He rushed to the door, calling out, "Nurse! Nurse! She woke up!" The nurse hurried in, followed by the doctor. They checked Nana's vitals and asked her a series of questions. After a thorough examination, the doctor turned to David with a concerned expression. "It appears she has no memory of who she is," the doctor explained. "This kind of amnesia can happen after a traumatic event." David's worry deepened. He had hoped that Nana would be able to tell him her name and provide contact information for her family. Now, he was faced with the challenge of finding her loved ones without any clues to her identity. Determined to help, David spoke with the hospital staff about the next steps. They decided to reach out to local authorities and media outlets, hoping that someone might recognize Nana and come forward with information. David stayed by her side, offering comfort and support, while they waited for any news that could lead them to her family. During the time, Emeka was missing Nana and was deeply distressed and determined to find her. He played a crucial role in the search efforts, coordinating with local authorities to track down any leads. Emeka's love and concern for Nana drove him to take every possible action to locate her. David was beginning to enjoy spending time with Nana, who was now known as Jane Doe. He found himself looking forward to their conversations and the moments they shared. Nana was showing signs of a quick recovery, her physical strength gradually returning. She was starting to smile more often, and her laughter filled the room with a sense of hope and warmth. Despite her progress, Nana was still concerned about not knowing her true identity. She often expressed her worries to David, who listened patiently and offered reassurance. "We'll find out who you are," he would say, his voice filled with determination. "I promise you we won't stop looking." Nana was getting used to her new name, but the uncertainty of her past lingered in her mind. She appreciated David's kindness and support, and she felt a growing bond with him. He had been her constant companion through this difficult time, and his presence brought her comfort. As the days passed, David and Nana developed a routine. They would take short walks around the hospital garden where Nana could enjoy the fresh air and sunshine. David would bring her books and magazines to keep her entertained, and they would spend hours talking about everything and nothing. Nana's recovery was a testament to her resilience and the care she received. Although she still had a long way to go, She felt stronger with each passing day, and while the mystery of her identity remained unsolved, she found solace in the fact that she was not alone. With David by her side, she knew she had someone who genuinely cared about her well-being and was committed to helping her find her way back to her true self. One day, Amika went on the news with a picture of Naina, pleading for any information about her whereabouts. He described her as missing and asked anyone with information to contact the number displayed on the screen. At that time, David was at home after a long day at the hospital. As he watched the news, he noticed the picture and immediately recognized the woman he had been calling Jane Doe, even though the news referred to her as Naina. David's heart raced as he grabbed his phone and dialed the number on the screen. After a few rings, Amika answered. "Hello, this is Amika," he said, his voice filled with hope and anxiety. "Hi, Amika. My name is David," David began, trying to keep his voice steady. "I think I have some information about Naina." There was a brief pause on the other end. "You know where she is?" Emeka asked, his voice trembling with a mix of hope and fear. "Yes, I believe so," David replied. "She's been in the hospital where I've been visiting her. She was in an accident and has been unconscious for a while. When she woke up, she couldn't remember anything about herself. We've been calling her Jane Doe." Emeka's breath caught in his throat. "Is she okay? Can I see her?" "She's recovering well," David assured him, "but she still doesn't remember who she is. I think it would be best if you came to the hospital. Seeing you might help her remember." "Thank you, David. Thank you so much," Emeka said, his voice filled with gratitude. "I'll come right away. Which hospital is she in?" David provided the hospital's name and address, and Emeka promised to be there as soon as possible. As David hung up the phone, he felt a sense of relief and anticipation. He hoped that this reunion would help Naina regain her memories and finally bring her the peace she deserved. Meanwhile, Emeka rushed to the hospital, his heart pounding with a mix of excitement and nervousness. He couldn't wait to see Naina and hoped that this would be the beginning of her journey back to her true self. Emeka went to the hospital and found Naina, feeling overjoyed to see her. David was also present. When Naina looked at David, then at Emeka, it was clear she couldn't remember anything, which Emeka had somewhat expected. A few days later, Naina was discharged from the hospital. While everyone was happy to see her, they noticed she had changed. Naina became reserved and quiet, often staying in her room and not communicating much. It became difficult for everyone to connect with her. Emeka tried his best to make Naina comfortable, but his efforts seemed to have little effect. David visited from time to time, and the family noticed that Naina seemed happier when he was around. It became clear that David was the key to helping Naina recover. Emeka had mixed feelings about David and Naina's relationship. On one hand, he was relieved and happy to see Naina recovering and finding happiness with David. He recognized that David played a crucial role in helping Naina regain her memories and emotional stability. However, there might have been moments of sadness or nostalgia for Emeka, as he had to come to terms with the changes in his relationship with Naina and accept that she was moving on with David. Ultimately, Emeka focused on his own life and happiness, planning his wedding and maintaining a strong bond with his siblings. He found peace in knowing that Naina was in good hands and that their family remained close-knit and supportive. One day, David and Naina went to the beach. As they sat on the sand, they shared a kiss, and Naina began to have flashes of her memory. She stood up, confused and emotional, and started crying. When they got home, David explained what had happened. The family then shared with David the details of Naina's past. Naina's feelings about her relationship with David were complex and evolving. Initially, she was confused and overwhelmed, especially as she began to regain her memories. However, as time passed, she started to feel a deep sense of comfort and happiness with David. His presence helped her feel more secure and supported during her recovery. As their relationship grew stronger, Naina likely felt grateful for David's patience and understanding. Days turned into months, and the relationship between David and Naina grew stronger. Meanwhile, Emeka was planning his wedding and was able to move on with his life. The bond between the siblings remained strong, and they supported each other through this journey. The moral of the story is about the power of love, patience, and support in the face of adversity. It highlights how important it is to be there for loved ones during difficult times and how healing can come from unexpected places. Letting go and allowing others to help can lead to positive outcomes. The story also emphasizes the strength of family bonds and the importance of moving forward while cherishing the connections that matter most. Thank you for watching Granny G Stories. Should you wish to watch more of these stories, please subscribe to the channel